Welcome to Eighth House Portal. How is everyone doing? I'm enjoying the winter here where I am, and my town has quite a lot of snow actually, which is strange because about a week ago it became so warm, all the snow and ice melted, and then a few days ago a snowstorm came right through. So everything's covered in snow again, which I don't mind because I love the snow, I love winter, so not a big deal. Just a bit confusing as to when I should plant seeds, right? So it looks like it's going to be another interesting season for farming or, backyard farming, I guess. I have to apologize to anybody that's listened to my previous episodes. I realized I went back and listened even after I edited some of the nonsense out that I repeat myself quite a bit in some of my episodes. Gosh, that was awful trying to hear myself again. I hate having to go back and listen to myself or even watch myself. But so I apologize for that for anyone listening. And hopefully I won't be so repetitive this time. Last time we were in the realm of the creator economy, and I wanted to continue with that. But I wanted to go into, because last time we spoke about, I explored the spiritual dimension. And I wanted to just kind of wrap up this topic and talk about maybe some signs that as a creator you might be more controlled than you think, and maybe even trying to look at ways to reclaim ownership. So, a bit of a recap. Once something starts generating attention and influence, there's going to be revenue, and that becomes an asset that people have, which can attract partners, managers, agencies, platforms. And all of those entities want to participate in the value and the revenue being created. And I just want to be clear, I think collaboration can be very healthy and productive. There are also times when creators can begin to feel like something has shifted, though, when they work with these other organizations. Something's shifted from what they've built, and it no longer feels entirely like their own. And some of you might think, well, of course not, because you have so many people working. Is that what you want? Maybe there are some creators that just want other people to take control. I have a feeling most of them don't, but I'm sure there are the exceptions. So I wanted to explore some of the signs of creators and what they've built, maybe moving from more self-directed expression to other influences controlling what they do. And these signs that I'm going to bring up that I thought about different things that could happen. And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong going on, but they could just be signals that deserve some attention. So the first thing I'd like to bring up is when you start to feel pressure as a creator to promote things you don't really believe in. That could be a warning sign. Most of us begin to do this work because we really truly care about whatever it is that we're talking about or sharing, whether that's art, storytelling, wellness, etc. But when you start getting paid, when there's monetization that enters the realm, creators might receive offers from partners or, sponsors. And some of those partners their values might not align with your own. I know there's somebody I don't really watch him as much anymore. I just don't have time, but he's a YouTuber, Jacob Israel. I don't know if anybody knows who that is. He's got his own YouTube channel, and I remember him saying quite a few times that there have been people that have reached out to him to work with him, and he refuses. He says there have been a few people that have contacted me, but he does not feel that his values align with theirs, and he turns them down. And then there was, I think, eventually one company that sold cleaning products, and he did agree to accept that deal, and he does promote their products because he truly believes in what it does. So, as a creator, when you start having that revenue that becomes tied to promotions, you might start to feel this pressure within to say yes, even though you really don't want to and it doesn't feel right. And over time, that little bit of stress that you feel, that tension, it can create like a conflict between who you truly are and that financial incentive. And then as that tension, that pressure starts to grow within, you might ask yourself some difficult questions. Um, am I doing this because I believe in it? Or is this because it just rewards me for talking about this and promoting it? There's this anxiety that builds and builds slowly. Another warning sign that I thought of are possibly contracts that would restrict what a creator can say or create even. So there are probably many agreements out there that define, once you get into collaborations with certain organizations, they might define what you are allowed to represent as a brand and which topics you're allowed to talk about and what products that you're supposed to mention. And I believe, from what I've heard, that these restrictions can be quite common, but they can also affect that creative freedom that we all were seeking in the beginning, right? So some of these contracts, they will prevent creators from even working with other companies in the same industry. So there's this money and reach over integrity with misaligned collaborations. And then it seems like maybe content decisions are made for the algorithm first without even thinking about what the creator truly wants to do. And then you might have contracts that restrict one from discussing specific messages. How much control do you want other people to have over you? And that all of those restrictions will shape the direction, the path of that content that the creator makes. And at first, it may even be subtle. You won't even really, you might think, well, no big deal. But as you continue down that path, it will probably magnify what's really going on. The third thing I came up with was having not having clear revenue structures. So, because some people end up working with organizations, agencies, there's multiple intermediaries, right? And platforms. So, when you start getting that income, that revenue goes through different layers, and the creators may not always have a clear understanding of how that income is calculated or even distributed. So, if you as a creator cannot understand where this revenue is coming from and the percentage that is given to whoever that you work with and who receives what share, that is a huge lack of transparency that needs to be discussed. Like, is the revenue split going to favor platforms and partners instead of you? And also long term contracts, especially with those MCNs that I spoke about last time. When you enter long term contracts, it's you already selling your future self to a brand. Do you really want, ask yourself, do you really want to sell your future self because of these long contracts? And then, of course, not having a clear financial picture of where the revenue is going. It's a business issue. It's a huge business issue. And it's also a matter of trust. Can you trust these companies, these organizations? Another sign I would look for is maybe when the relationship with the audience you've created becomes purely transactional or mostly transactional. Most creators build these communities because they have shared interests, and people kind of you pull people towards you like a magnet because they have a shared interest, and you have meaningful conversations. But when you start having content that's heavily monetized, the interactions with the audience you've built, they start to shift towards promotion all the time and sponsorship messages. And instead of that shared curiosity and creativity that you had, that relationship with the audience might start to feel like a marketplace. I don't know why I got the image of like the marketplaces like in, is it Turkey or like places in the Middle East? You kind of see those in the movies where they're like shouting, one stall shouting over here for what they're selling and the other one. I don't know why I got that picture in my head, but and when stuff like that starts happening, the audience will feel it immediately. Another sign I would say is when the content no longer feels authentic. Like if you're the creator and it just doesn't feel like you, it's not authentic, that's going to be a huge problem because, like I mentioned before in the other episode, authenticity it's not just one of the most studied factors in this influencer, research, but the audience strongly respond to creators that they perceive as authentic or genuine. So that term authenticity, it's not just something we're throwing around. It is a real factor that can be measured. So producing content that you feel disconnected with from, you're disconnected with your own voice or values or interests, that inner discomfort that you're going to feel, it's going to reach your audience energetically, and they're going to feel that before anything else. You're going to feel like you're performing, right? A role instead of just being you that you were before. And when you have to pretend all the time, you're gonna get exhausted. You're also gonna have this stagnation, right? Like it's like you become this standing water, or you're gonna burn out. Another thing to maybe think of as a warning sign would be depending on the algorithm, because these platforms reward certain behaviors like frequent posting or trending formats or specific types of messages or engagement. You as a creator then begin to change the content that you put out there, right? Just to satisfy those algorithms. So then over time it becomes something that the algorithm is shaping your creative decisions instead of your own personal artistic or curiosity. And so that's like a loss of, I guess, your decision making, your autonomy. And when you have multiple partners or team members involved, in your work, in the production, a lot of these creative decisions will gradually start to shift from just you, the creator, to this system that you may have built around you of these others. Which again, like I said, some people like will seek that because they feel like they need help, but you have to be careful of how much power you give away to people. Like I said before, collaboration isn't the problem. It's when you start to feel that you don't have meaningful control over your voice, your message anymore. Okay, and if you feel that way, it's because there's the balance of power has most likely changed. So you have to remember that attention attention you get from the audience, it generates this value, and that value is going to expand. And there will be systems that form around it, possibly. And those systems will then want to involve looking at how much power and ownership they can attain from what you've created. So you have to be very careful. So then I thought to myself, well, how does the creator remain conscious of their autonomy while still participating within these systems that are designed to capture attention and influence and revenue? Because in the end, we still have bills to pay, right? But how can you still remain conscious within it? So what I've done is I've kind of looked at maybe ways to reclaim ownership of your brand, or just to keep them in mind so that when you come across any of these signals, these warning signs, you kind of take a step back and think about what to do. Or if you are in a situation where you do work with teams, MCNs, etc., maybe you want to take a step back, review where you're at, and make sure that you are in control here. So one way that you could possibly reclaim ownership if you don't have it any longer is reclaiming your authentic voice. I think would be the first thing, because like I've said before, there's quite a lot of research that shows authenticity is one of the most important factors for the audience because of trust and engagement, right? When audiences perceive what you share as overly commercial or maybe insincere, that trust that they initially had with you is going to decrease. And guess what happens? Those purchases that they made before, they will decrease as well. They will not have the intention to buy anything. And you can look at that in the research yourself. It also shows that if a creator starts promoting things too much, or sponsorship content, followers actually don't react positively to that because they feel that it's not really your voice. So keep that in mind. So as a creator, you want to regain that authentic voice by making sure that whoever you bring into your energetic sphere is aligned with your values. Don't be afraid to tell them no. Or if you're hiring someone, you don't have to just hire somebody because another person that works for you knows that person and their neighbors, or this is their sister. You don't have to do that. Okay? This is your thing. So choose partners that align with your values. Do not accept sponsorships that feel inauthentic. And then try to go over your content and make sure that your original message or goal is in them. And that will protect that long-term audience trust that you created all on your own from the beginning, most likely. So just remember, authenticity, it's about alignment between your intention and the expression of that. When you start to promote things that you do not believe in, that can feel like an internal tension, like I said earlier, and emotional exhaustion. And there's going to be that loss of creative joy as well. Reclaiming your authenticity can be looked at as restoring your energetic alignment with your purpose. And then I guess the second thing you could do to reclaim ownership of your brand, of what you've created, is reclaiming that financial transparency. That, I think, would be the second most important thing. There have been studies of the influencer industry that show this expansion of these agencies and networks, these intermediaries that I mentioned, who they are the ones that formalize relationships between the creators and advertisers and other organizations, and they help negotiate deals and shape compensation structures, and also creative direction. So when I talked about MCN, so multi-channel networks, they can facilitate monetization, but also they can introduce power imbalances between creators and intermediaries. So as a creator, you you can reclaim control by maybe demanding transparent revenue structures or negotiating clearer contracts. And you can also hire independent legal advisors. You've got to have this transparency, okay, restored. It's just a must. When we're dealing with shared resources and power dynamics, financial transparency is essential about restoring that balance in that energetic exchange. So if attention is a form of energy, in like what I mean, like time or focus or emotional investment, then money represents how that energy is redistributed. How can I explain this a different way? So when you're giving attention to something, you're giving your time, emotional charge, whether that's anger, love, curiosity, and that creates this mental waveform, whether it's focus or imagination. And that's human life force pointing at something, right, that they're concentrated on. And you, the creator, give that energy, and you can get paid sometimes from that. The platform gets millions in energy. It turns that into money. And then the system, okay, within that system, the money flows toward what captures the most attention. So you can look at money as a receipt of where the energy is gone. And currently in this economy, this creator economy, most of the energy is shared, but most of the money is not. So that the creator then ends up losing this energetic ownership due to chasing trends or no off time or only creating for deals and sponsorships. So you're creating while others decide how that energy is converted into money, power, and data. So try to keep in mind that energetic balance. Another thing you can think of, I guess the third thing would be reclaiming audience relationships. If you go and read the comments and, if you're somebody that has a lot of people that interact with your channel or your Facebook or whatever it is, read some of the comments, see what you get from that. But reclaiming audience relationships is important. That relationship between the influencer or the creator and the audience, they are significantly influenced by trust, okay, which turns into that purchasing behavior. And when the audience starts to see heavy commercialization, okay, that can actually reduce the trust of the audience. And that's been proven in studies, actually. So as a creator, you want to try to rebuild authentic relationships, maybe prioritize community interaction or reduce excessive sponsorships. And, I'm sure a lot of creators share personal insights or educational content. So that's, something else that could maybe rebuild that relationship. When you're talking about in energetic terms, you want to think of a healthy creator audience relationship that involves trust, mutual inspiration, and reciprocity. So reclaiming that authenticity can restore a more balanced energetic exchange. So the fourth thing I would say is reclaiming creative autonomy from platforms. As we know, creators have to adapt their content to the algorithms of platforms, right? Because those platforms prioritize engagement metrics, right? So whether it's interaction or watch time. And like I said, that can create tension with creative expression, okay? And then, of course, there's incentives from the algorithm. So these platforms are basically infrastructure that control visibility and monetization tools. And one way that there are some ways you can maybe try to reclaim that autonomy. Maybe diversify your platforms. Another thing I've heard before is building an email list or community, or creating independent products or courses. And that can reduce that dependence on the algorithm, okay? That algorithm distribution. In energetic terms, I would say platforms are like platforms direct the flow where the attention flows, right? Because they get to choose where that goes, the content. And as a creator, you may say, is my creativity serving the algorithm, or is the algorithm serving my creativity? So when you're trying to reclaim autonomy, you have to be consciously deciding where creative energy is directed. Collaboration is a wonderful thing, actually. So I hope nobody's misunderstood that from these episodes. But it's how we grow. It's how we expand. And honestly, in the world that we are in right now, it's going to be very necessary to collaborate with others. But just remember, your energetic field is not a public playground. So be very careful who you invite into it, because you will have people smiling, cheering you on. You know, it's a kind of like you're in like a movie, or you're on stage or something, and everybody's just pretending. I always ask myself, like, when I see some of these individuals, are those people around them going to still be cheering them on and patting them on the back, being their best friend when there's no money anymore? I don't know. I can sense fake people pretty quickly. So, but just be very careful who you invite into your realm, because the moment money enters that space, like I said, people behave very differently than if there were no checks to cash, no brands to attach to, no access to what you've built. It doesn't make them bad. It just means that their incentives have changed. So you have to be more awake. You have to set clear boundaries at the beginning of any relationship, really. Don't just say yes on the spot to decisions you might regret later. Sit with it, sleep on it. If somebody's forcing you to like sign something immediately, or the deal's going to go, to me, that's a red flag. So I would say, well, if I can't like sit on that, then no. That's usually what I say to people. No. Make sure you read contracts more than once. What I might do is I'm going to create an audit for creators that will be downloadable for a while for free. So check that out. But just remember that the most important asset in this whole creator economy is your energy. Protect that first, and let every collaboration, every individual, every group, every contract, every dollar flow from there. You've got to make sure you question everything and be very clear, and make sure these organizations are clear in their terms. I hope this has helped, whether it's people that are creators or just individuals that are curious about this economy. I found it interesting learning a bit more about this realm, as I've only just kind of stepped into it not long ago. So it's interesting to read up on all this stuff. In any case, I hope it's helped shed different light onto this topic. And until next time, take care.